Hello, hello, and welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Pale. Of course, I am your host, Nate Pale. I'm joined today with Marcus Chan. Marcus is the founder of Venli Consulting Group. He helps B2B sales professionals sell more and sell better without years of experience through his coaching and training programs. Prior to this, Marcus was in corporate America for 14 plus years. In that time, he worked for two Fortune 500 organizations, promoted 10 times in 10 years with them. He has won countless awards and has been ranked in the top percentile every single year. In his last role, he led the sales organization of 110 plus employees, delivering 9 figures plus per year in new business sales. Marcus lives in Portland, Oregon with his wife, Sara, and toddler son, Roman. Welcome to the show, Marcus. How are you?
Hey, Nate, I'm great, man. Thanks for that awesome intro. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So you didn't mention in your intro, but you have it listed on your LinkedIn profile. You went from Speedos to 7 figures in sales. So what's kind of like your backstory of like getting started in sales?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So, growing up, I actually worked in my parents' restaurant growing up at a very, very young age, right? So that was a very normal part of my life. And it's funny because my plan was to continue to work in the restaurant up through college and pay for school. That was my goal. But my parents decided to tell me my senior year in high school, they said, hey, listen, Marcus, we're selling the restaurant. You have to go get a different job to pay for school. I'm like, great, awesome. So it was funny. So, and back then, people looked at classifieds. I think Craigslist was still a thing was a thing back then as well. And I could have gotten those routes, and I was looking, and I applied some places, but I started working my network, and I grew up as a competitive swimmer. And one of the people I reached out to was a former coach that I had worked with in the past. And he actually was opening up a swimsuit store, swimsuit store for retail, also for competitive swimmers. So he hired me as one of his first sales associates, if you will. And it was a retail job where I got the chance to sell Speedos. But obviously there's a retail traffic too, which was cool. But the best part was I was on weekends, like while, I'll go to school during the week. And then on weekends, there usually were big swim meets, right? And at these big competitive swim meets, they'd be an hour and a half away. I would actually, wake up like 3 in the morning, load up this 1991 Ford Ranger pickup truck full of Speedos and Speedo gear, and I'd drive an hour and a half out of the way, set up stands, at 5, 6 in the morning, set up Speedo stands, and I would sell and sling Speedos for 12 to 13 hours, and then pack everything up and then drive home. So that was like my first experience in that selling environment from a retail environment right there, which I absolutely loved. And eventually, when I graduated, that's when I actually went to a real outside hunting B2B sales role. And when I graduated, I worked for a company where it was a startup division of a major Fortune 500 company in which they were really brand new. And I had to go out there and secure contracts, right? And they had no customers. They had no customers. So I had to go out and sell B2B. It was door knocking, cold calling. There's no leads given to us. So we had to cold generate everything from scratch to build the business up. And then from there, I fell in love with sales eventually and stayed in sales pretty much the rest of my life. And now I'm here.
It's funny how like when we're young, the habits that we're like taught, like carry on into what we're good at as we develop our career. So you started off working in a restaurant, right? And that's a lot of customer service, getting to know people. It's hard work, it's long hours. And then you go into setting up, going to work on weekends in college is, most college students don't want to go do that to begin with. And then to go drive, hours away at the early morning, set up shop in the hot sun and slinging product at an event. It's just, it's very like, challenging. It's very tiring. It's very exhausting and grueling. And to do that, and then you come out. So when somebody says like, "Hey, we need to start up a division and go knock doors," you're like, "I got this. I've been doing it for years. Like, I'll figure out how to sell the products I'm selling, but I know the hustle already." So it's kind of cool how you had that background, that story. So
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is like, I grew up just working really hard, right? And so that I was used to that. I'm like, oh, cool, right? And for me, even when I was, slinging Speedos and doing all that stuff, I never sought out sales, right? Because I'm like, here I am. I'm just helping out all these people who could utilize these products to help their kids swim faster, swim better, get better results in the pool, which made them really proud. I knew that was a goal because I was a competitive swimmer. So that's all I did was work with them and help them find the right solution. So for me, it was never sales. So when I was looking to go into sales, even when I graduated, what was interesting was I didn't see it as I'm going into sales. I saw it as an opportunity to build a startup division from scratch. I saw the potential greatness, the potential empire or business I could help build and be instrumental. Like I was drawn to that vision of that startup building something. And this is before startups were cool, because this is like 2007, right? So people didn't like, it wasn't as cool back then. But for me, there was an allure to be part of something bigger, to build it from scratch, but also to have a hand in building the foundation and putting it into place and building something great. And that to me was really attractive, because the reality was is before I graduated, I was really fortunate. I had 4 or 5 job offers on the table, and all of them paid more than that job I took. But this job I took had the best vision, and that's why I went for it.
Yeah, I love the idea of building something that you're passionate around. You're part of a startup, you're growing something, you're vested in it emotionally, versus just taking like some high paying job and be like, hey, you're going to go sling doors, right? It's like, how
Right.
exciting can I get about doors? But like, they do got to be sold too. And what's interesting is you're describing sales not really as a sales role. And I think about it too, because when I think of salespeople, I think of pushy. I think of like a bad fitting suit. I think of like high pressure tactics of like, what can I do to convince you to make this purchase right now for your family, and kind of standoffish. But everybody that I know that has a sales uh, job or sales business that does really, really good at it, I never think of them as like a salesperson. I think of them as really good at building relationships, building friendships, connecting with people, and solving problems. And I think sometimes the sales word gets a bad connotation, but the people that really excel at it don't really do sales. They're really good at relationships, conversations. What's your take on that?
Yeah, 100%, right? I have found the best salespeople, like, I mean, yes, yeah, they like money. That's not really why they do what they do. A lot of them are very driven by something greater. They usually love to help people, and I see that as a really common trait. It's hard to just find a consistently top performer who doesn't enjoy creating a happy client, happy customer, and making sure that they over deliver. Right. And usually the top performers, they get really upset when they offer something and the back end doesn't get delivered properly. And that's a common theme I see for those who are really, truly great at sales. And it doesn't matter whatever they sell, because there's a lot of pride to it, right? I mean, of course, are there bad salespeople out there that are sleazy, that wear the bad fitting suits? Oh, of course there are. There's bad people in every industry. But the ones who are truly the best, they almost always, like 99.9% of the time, they are focused on the end result they want that customer to achieve. They care so much about helping them. And a lot of times, like, it's to them, the result the customer get is in line with their reputation. And they take it personally if that customer is not happy, which I find to be very, very powerful. That's why, I find some of the best businesses that are built are typically built with people with sales mind. Now, obviously, I'm a little biased here, but with that sales mind, then they're always focused on the customer, right? They're thinking, hey, you know what? How else can I improve this product or offering to be better for my customer, right? And I'll give you an example. Even my business, my main program, I have refined and improved and redone 5 times in 2 years, because I'm constantly getting feedback from my students and my clients, and I want to improve the experience and improve their results. And that's really powerful, right? So I always ask them, okay, what do you think about this? Should I add this to this? Should I do this? And I'll say, hey, I'm not even going to charge. I just want to find out from you, would these things give you more value, and will this help you in your job? And I find for most businesses, they do that consistently. They're constantly seeking feedback, and they have that customer focused. And when they do that, the sales just come, because they provide such a great experience for that end user.
hmm I think that does get overlooked a lot of times, because as you're describing it, I was thinking about how you're talking about your personal business, which is you're doing sales coach development, right? So your product is teaching people to sell better. And if you said, hey, I just want to learn to sell my product better, then it really doesn't matter who buys it and what the results are. It's just getting people in the door and signing them up. And you're like, hey, how can I refine that? But when you're talking about it, you want your students to become better at what they do. And if you can go like, hey, I can take you from whatever to doing 10 times your sales next year, 20 times your sales, or like grow a huge division and just do like rocket to the moon, like that is a super rewarding experience that you're going to get. And it's like, it doesn't really matter what the price point is or what you're selling it for when you're providing that level of value. You're just kind of like getting this product that's just so helpful and so valuable to the people that are using it. So I think that's
100%.
cool. And I think it really relates to the products you're developing. Is hey, like, I know like sales agents in my industry, they get all frustrated with, the construction process or delays or stuff's not right or their customers aren't happy. And it's because they want to have a seamless transaction that just makes people so excited to move into their house that they're just in love with what the whole process, and they don't want to deal with, like excuses and delays and poor workmanship and stuff like that. So yeah, I totally get what you're talking about with the salespeople being so vested in the customer experience that's why they typically do roll up to being the people that run the companies or work for the startups that really help things grow. So
I think it's really important too, and I think you bring up a really good point. And this is where, some salespeople will disagree with me here, but I'm a firm believer that all salespeople need to be really exposed and taught and to be integrated into part of the operational back end of the process. I find that to be so vital, right? Because a lot of times it's so easy for a salesperson to sit back and say, hey, customer success, hey, operations, why didn't you deliver here? Well, they all also want to take care of the customer as well, but the salesperson doesn't always have a clear understanding what are all the nitty gritty little steps that potentially could be missed or, could be adjusted and fixed on the front end that help on the back end delivery. And when you have an understanding operationally, because I've also worked in operations as well, it helped me have a better understanding of everything from A to Z, from prospecting to customer success. I was able to see every single step, right? That was really powerful because then I could also, after you sign the agreement, I now knew how to properly communicate to the customer the right expectations. This way they're happy, they understand, even if it's not the timeline they want, at least they know that you are being transparent with them. If there are delays, maybe stuff is stuck on a cargo ship in the Atlantic, right? Whatever, right? You can at least communicate with them and be helping them throughout that process till the very end. And the top salespeople who understand that, when they understand the operational part of the business, I find they sell more and they have happier customers, even if things take longer than they expect.
Mm-hmm. You nailed it right on the head when you said the word expectations, and managing expectations is the biggest factor in a successful transaction, a happy customer and stuff like that. Because when you were talking about understanding the whole process, right, you're able to understand and you're able to communicate the expectation of the experience that the customer is going to have, right? And so usually when there's an unhappy customer, there's some sort of disconnect of what was represented to them and the actual events. And so if you're a sales representative and you're conveying a message and you don't understand that, you might have misled somebody to believe a certain thing was possible. And then when it becomes not possible, you're stuck with the problem of explaining it. You're stuck with, hey, I gave you this expectation and it's not this way. So now, the customer's upset and you're going back and going, hey, why is it like this? But if you understood the whole process, you could say, hey, we want to do it this way. These are the things that could go wrong. And if they do go wrong, we'll help you through it. So you're managing the whole expectations. And so like a lot of times people say, under promise, over deliver, right? Sometimes we under promise too much and it just doesn't sound that compelling, or we over promise because we want to just look good to get the sale. But it's really about managing expectations of what's possible, what's not. So I think a lot of people don't get in that space and understand how to do that. And it really starts with understanding every bit of the process from the very beginning to the end, so you can help explain better.
100%.
Yeah. So you were very successful corporate America in sales. A lot of people would say, if the sky's the limit, you got good benefits, good companies you're working for, you can name your own price. Why would you think, hey, I'm going to jump ship, I'm going to go do my own thing and start my own business, consulting and coaching others in their sales program? What led you to that epiphany that doing your own thing was right for you and not working for corporate America anymore?
Yeah, great question, right? One of the things was, I think unlike many people, I actually never want to be an entrepreneur. And I feel like, especially in today's time, there's definitely, it feels like people are like, oh, be an entrepreneur. It's just a glamorous lifestyle. There's a lot of marketing around that, right? Being an entrepreneur, I saw my parents grow up as entrepreneurs. It's hard as heck. I saw the amount of hours, the failures, the struggles, the mistakes, all the things that they went through emotionally, physically, as a result of being an entrepreneur. So I actually never wanted that. So I went to corporate path, and I loved it. I mean, I did it for years, right? And what was really interesting is in 2015, this is when the seedling started kind of going into my head, like potentially I could do something more. And at that point, I've been really fortunate where I've had achieved quite a bit of success at that point. And I had a lot of people reaching out to me and saying, hey, Marcus, listen, you have achieved so much already. You've been promoted so many times. You literally have turned around teams. You are doing this, and this, and this. You should write a book. You got to write a book. You got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I'm like, really? I'm like, it's one that I didn't. I'm like, okay, I guess I could. So I wrote a couple ebooks, right? And I wanted to self-publish because I wanted to also just test if I could just sell it online. And it wasn't about the money, really. It was really more like, would anyone even want to read it? I didn't even know. So I wrote a couple of ebooks. I figured out how to distribute automatically online, and I started selling copies. I mean, like I remember my first money I made online. It was $9 on PayPal, and it like blew my mind. I'm like, holy crap! Like, it worked. Like, now, but at that point, like I was doing quite well financially, so it's really hard to leave a great paying job for $9 an ebook. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool, whatever. So I started kind of learning more about internet marketing. I'm like, this is a really interesting concept to be able to build a business potentially. Like all I need is my phone and my laptop. I can do it anywhere. To me, I was very intriguing, right? I'm like, okay, maybe maybe I can build some side hustle money just for fun, right? I'm like, just nothing wrong with extra stream of income. So that's when I was studying it for a while. And that's why I uncovered online courses, right? And this is a couple of years later, I'm like online courses. I'm like, But I'm like, what am I going to do though? I'm like, what am I, a quote unquote expert in? What do people ask me those questions on? And at that point, I was running a very large sales org at that point. The team I was running at that time was like 85, 90 reps. And I'm like, you know what? I get a lot of questions about improving sales. And these are like, whether they're top performers or low performers, they all struggle with different parts of the sales process. And the company I worked for had a really good training program, but still needed areas to be filled in. And what I also uncovered was that because I would hire like 30, 40 people a year, I uncovered after doing literally thousands of interviews, the ones that I hired still needed training. The ones that didn't hire definitely needed training. And I'm like, that's a major gap. But they didn't need some like corporate training that like, it's from a book written by people who've never done the job before. They needed tactical, proven training, step by step, that taught them how to run a real sales process. So from there, I started building out this digital program, and I started building out. It took me 2 years to build out. Okay, 2 years because I was in a hotel room 100 plus nights a year. I was working 80 plus hours a week. Now, during that time when I was building it, I had something change in my life. I had a baby, all right? That baby changed everything for me, as it changed for many people, right? While I'm doing all this travel, having a baby, and suddenly realizing I was traveling a ton and not being able to be there and missing certain like milestones, I felt like I'd be gone for a week. I would come back and I feel like the baby learned like a whole new language. I'm like, what happened? I missed all that, right? And that hurt a lot, right? So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm like, because I could see my trajectory of where I was going to go. I'll just keep climbing the ladder. That's always going to happen. Keep climbing the ladder, probably stay in the same company. If I left there, I'll just do the same thing somewhere else. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is cool. And I'm happy doing it. And I love to do it. But am I missing out on something greater, right? So fast forward 2 years later, I had the program built out, and I was freaking out. This is March 2019, so last year, a year and a half ago. I was freaking out a little bit. I realized I had spent 2 years building this program out, and I didn't know if anyone was going to even buy it. I'm like, my God, I literally spent all these late nights building this. I didn't beta test it. I didn't get any feed. I had no idea. I decided to build it. I'm like, oh gosh, like, what this fails. I did a soft launch, small email list, and I woke up and made $2,000 overnight. And that was the aha. That was it. That was the aha. I'm like, huh, I can scale $1,000 a pop. I could scale that, right? And then I'm like, okay, and I really had to, at that point, I had to really dig deep into myself. Like, what do I want in life, right? What do I want? And I realized, during this whole journey, I had been chasing the wrong types of goals, right? I had been chasing means goals, right? Chasing that title, chasing that award, chasing that income, chasing all these things. And I wasn't chasing the end goal. The end goal for me was essentially, the reason I was doing all these things already was to be able to be put in a financial position to do what I want, when I want, whenever I want. That was the end goal. And now I just uncovered the vehicle, right? I just uncovered the vehicle. So that meant I need to pivot, right? So I started planning out my strategy, what I was going to do. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm going to do this. But also more importantly, one of the things as well that was really, really important is I also uncovered, I'm like, am I holding myself back from greatness? And what I mean by that was, am I holding myself back from the amount of influence and impact and legacy I could build, by staying in this company, staying in this job? And when to go even deeper, because I was a top performer and I love what I did, and I was influencing not just my team of 100 plus employees, but because I was one of the top leaders, I was a benchmark constantly. I mean, I had a lot of influence in the whole company. So a lot of people knew who I was, and that was cool. But I knew I could explode my reach and my influence in helping others become great at sales by doing my own thing. I couldn't do that where I was at. I was always going to be limited to the population of the company and the sales org. So that's when I planned it all out. I'm like, okay, this is March. I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait till, number one, I had to make sure I got all my stock that I had a bunch of stock I was going to basically vest middle of July, right? So I wanted that stock, right? I did leave a bunch of other stock that I was going to invest later on, but it is what it is. I also have my President's Club level trip, which is a top elite, trip, or, 5-star resort trip. That was in August. I wanted to go on that. It's a free vacation with my wife, right? I also knew that we would end our first quarter, and then there'd be an earnings call first couple weeks of September, and then almost always, because it's a great company and they perform well, the stock would go up. So I knew if I cashed my stock out too early, I'd lose out on those gains. So I waited till literally right after the earnings call, like a day or two after, and I literally quit my job, I cashed out my stock, and I rolled out and started my business. And it's been an amazing journey. So I'm coming up on 1 year, coming up real soon. It's been obviously there's highs, there's lows, there's plenty of lows. It's fun, it's challenging, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. It's been amazing.
Yeah, you're talking my language there, because I was traveling a lot for work when my son was in that 1 to 2 year old range, and I know what you mean. Like, you'd leave on Monday, come home on Wednesday night, and you're like, where did you learn like this vocabulary? Like, you couldn't speak on Monday, and now you're doing complete sentences on Wednesday. Like, where did it happen? Because like, I think, at least for me, I thought kids like straight lined their progression, and it's just like one day they can do something, the next day they can't. Like, you can't walk today, tomorrow you can't. It's just a flip the switch, and just there's no like kind of like easing into it. And you start noticing like, hey, you're missing out on a lot of things. And you start going, hey, what is important to me? What are the things I'm chasing? And yeah, you're going, I get a title bump. Wow. What's next? You get a raise. You make a certain amount of money. And it's just like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? There's no end in sight. You're just going to spin it. And then if you go somewhere else, right, it's going to be the same thing. And you look at it, you go, hey, what kind of lasting impact can I really have? And is this taking me to my goals? And you talked about like work wherever, whenever, and however you want. That's like location independent, time independent working. You go, well, most likely why you want to do that is you want to spend time with the people that matter to you most, to create the memories and experiences. And so you go, is my values in alignment with where I want to go? And once you kind of realize that, it's hard to turn that switch off. But a lot of people probably said, Marcus, like, look at you. You're confident. You got tons of experience doing this. Like, of course you could go do this. Of course you're going to be successful at this, but I'm not like you. I'm not, I haven't done it as many years. I haven't had that experience. I haven't had that level of success. Did you experience a lot of that doubt other people have where you're like, hey, is this something that I can actually do? Am I good enough? Am I an expert enough? Or am I just destined to be a good earner for a company, but I can never go do this on my own?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And first off, happens all the time. It happens this week, right? It happens every single day where I question certain decisions I'm making, right? And that's very normal, right? At the end of the day, this type of imposter syndrome is very, very real. Now, one of the things I have found that's really helped, and yes, I am fortunate in the sense that because I grew up in the world of sales where I basically my face pummeled for years, with rejection. You learn to be, to interpret rejection in a different way. It's not that it doesn't bother you, because it still bothers me, rejection, but you interpret it differently than you used to, right? And when you start your own business, were there doubts? 100%. 100%. Are there doubts still today? Still, for sure, right? If I have a rough day or rough week, when you are in that negative moment, right, where you start having that first automatic negative thought come through, the ant that comes through in your head, and it starts to eat at your brain a little bit. If you don't know how to neutralize it quickly, it can keep spreading, right? And if you want to go out there, I think number one, understand that's normal. That's the first thing. Understand it's normal, right? I did a couple things that really helped me as part of my journey. So literally, the very next day, right after I quit my job, because I was on a high, right? On this like honeymoon high. I'm like, right now, my head's in a good spot. I need to make sure I build a support network around me. So I immediately reached out to a couple friends, local friends in the Portland area, who are also successful entrepreneurs. And I want to make sure I start building a little network around me, right? So they were people that I could lean on and bounce ideas off and, cry to, if you will, to get their support. And that was the first thing I did, okay? And that was really, really awesome. And then the second thing I did was I revamped my morning routine. And I've shared my morning routine before, but I have part of my routine, there's certain parts that gives me control, right? And that's always helped me throughout any part of my life. But also what's really important as part of my morning routine is I'm also reviewing my future goals, right? And I do some mental exercises as well that mentally prepare me for the day. And that's really, really helpful. And then what I also did as well was I went and I got a coach for myself. And that's really important, right? To be able to invest into yourself, that can help, someone can help guide you and help you and give you direction is so vital, and by doing those things, all three of those things I just mentioned, that has helped me. And even though they still pop up, it still pops up that like, oh man, like, should I go back to corporate America? It doesn't bother me as much now as time has gone on, right? Because early on, it's kind of like, like when you first start anything, right? It's like if you are planting anything, you put the seed in, you water it, you might not get anything, right? You keep watering for a while, you're not gonna get anything. And you put in fertilizer, then you realize the fertilizer's not good or the dirt's not good, so you try to make some tweaks. And over time, eventually, you start growing a nice plant or tree or whatever. And that's like being an entrepreneur. Like, you have an idea, you plant that seed, you start watering it, it doesn't work, then you got to tweak and refine. But if you have the right processes in place and the right coaches and guidance to help you, your chances of success automatically go up. But also having other people support you is so vital for keeping your motivation up. And when you do that consistently, even when those ants come, because they still do, it's easier to fend them off so that you can stay focused and still execute every single day, regardless of how you feel.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about having a coach for yourself, because a lot of us think, hey, I know this stuff. Like, why do I need a coach? Like, what's a coach going to tell me I don't already know? And you forget. And it could go for business, for personal, or for physical fitness. Like, you go, hey, I know how to work out. Like, what do I need a coach for, a trainer? Well, they're there to, one, hold you accountable. Two, they pull what you're capable of outside of you. So, like, I've been working with a coach for my business a little bit, and we had a gap between conversations, and I'd started to get in my head, and I started to overthink things. I started to get like too many steps out in front, and I was just kind of like spinning my wheels.
Yeah.
And we got on the phone, and she's like, "You're going crazy, man. You're thinking too much. You're just in your mind too much. Just focus on this that's right here in front of you." And
Yes.
you're like, "You're right. I need somebody to ground me, to put my focus where it needs to be." And you just go, "Hey, shut up, get out of my head. Just do what's supposed to do. And if we show up and do the steps, it's going to lead to successful outcomes." So I think that's super, super important to have a coach, regardless of where you're at, and a support network. You got to have people that you can turn to and get advice. You know, a lot of times you're sitting at home starting your own business and you're not interacting with day-to-day people very often. And sometimes you just need to have the support group like, "Hey, you know, what do you think about this? What do you think about this idea? I'm struggling with this." And while you're also getting help from them, you're also giving support back to them in a way that, like, you know, your ideas, you're getting some immediate feedback if they're useful or not. So I think it's very important. So
Yeah, and I think the thing was with the coach, what's important to understand is, you know, if you are an expert in whatever and you're going to start a business doing whatever it's going to be, let's say you are a personal trainer and you love fitness and you want to go do that, and that's going to be your business. Awesome. Here's the thing. You might be a great personal trainer, but are you great at, say, the operational part of the business, you know, the accounting piece? You might not be. So you might need to hire someone for that. Are you good at setting up a business entity and do all those things? You may have no idea, right? Are you good at the marketing piece? You may not have any idea, or the sales piece, right? So I'll give you an example. So for me, for my business, I know I'm really good at the sales piece. That's what I've done. I'm comfortable with the direct sale. I can do all those things. I love that. That's what I grew up doing. But the marketing piece, I knew I could work on as well, right? I also know I'm not good with some of the internet marketing stuff, you know, like building funnels, email lists, landing pages, software, integrations, doing like that stuff was like foreign language to me, right? Now, I could have gone and tried to figure it out on my own for sure, but instead, I hired the best in the business to work with to help me with that, right? That's really important. And I spent a lot of money. I mean, I spent 5 figures to work with this guy, right? And it's helped me explode my business this year, right? And then now I just invested on Monday, I just invested into a personal branding coach, right? Who's going to help me with some of the branding pieces of my business, right? From social media to everything else. And that's because I'm not a branding expert. I'm not, okay? I have an idea, but again, it's impossible for everyone to be an expert at everything else, right? The next person I'm going to hire is going to be probably a speaking coach because I want to improve how I speak and how I present, because I know that's going to help me in communicating better for my clients and for potential future customers. So those are all things that we can always get better on, right? And I much rather spend $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 with somebody that's going to expedite my learning and cut me down that time, because if I spent 10,000 and that 10,000 makes me $1 million, I'm pretty sure it's a good ROI. You know, so you know, like it's all in that and how you look at investing, right? And that's how smart people think about investing. They think, hey, when I invest this money into whomever, what do I get out of it? How do I ensure I get back my investment? Obviously, you make a good decision about who you partner up with, but how can I utilize their experience to help me? It's kind of like the branding guy. So people are like, oh, branding is hard to tie a number to it for sure. But if I can help improve my brand more, and that allows me to get onto other great podcasts like yours and other really big podcasts, or get my name into Forbes or other things as well, that's only going to help my business exponentially. And these are things that's important to look at in a bigger picture versus what am I getting out today. It's more so, what do I get out of the long run when I hire someone who's going to help me take my game to the next level in whatever aspect?
Well, it's funny, we've had these discussions too about the sales process, and like you go in and you're saying, say you're selling like a software, and you say this software is like $100,000 a year, right? And like at face value, that's a big investment, right? That's $100,000. That's somebody's salary.
Right.
And you go, yes, but what does this software do? It saves you 5 people's salary, right? So you're saving $400,000 by spending $100,000. But not only is it saving you $400,000, but those 2 people that were going to work on this can now do other things, and they can generate revenues, or they can generate incomes of 2 to 3 times their salaries. All of a sudden, it's like $1 million, $100,000 thing is a net $1 million ad for the company. And
100%.
you're talking about it the same way about the investments on these coaches as these learning curves. You go, hey, $50,000, man, that's a lot of money. You're an entrepreneur. $50,000, that's a lot of money that
Right.
could be going into your own bills, your own pocket, your own
Right.
savings, investments. But you're realizing, hey, a $50,000 investment is going to take what I could do in 4 years down to 1 year. And wouldn't
100%.
that be amazing? So I want to switch gears on you a little bit. I want to get your take on this. So LinkedIn, you're huge on LinkedIn. We're seeing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people going nuts on LinkedIn right now. They're growing their personal brand. And I think maybe in the past, LinkedIn was this spot that people posted their resumes, people just did a little job searching, job hunting. They didn't do a lot of stuff, and then the companies just said, "Hey, just share our message, our press releases, and stuff like this." And so there's this like two schools of thought right now. Is like, if you're in B2B sales, are you just, hey, just push the company line, just do your thing, don't get too active, don't get too individualized, and people might get worried like, hey, if that person gets too big on the personal, are they going to leave and take their value with them? And then there's other people that are going, hey, having a strong personal brand helps the company, right? It brings them a lot more value, and they're encouraging the personal brand. So what has been your take on business-to-business salespeople that work for a corporation creating a personal brand? Should they be doing it or not?
Yeah, great question, right? So I think first off, whatever the company rules are, whatever the unspoken rules are, fortunate or unfortunate, you got to follow them, right? That's what you're employed there. It's like if you live in your parents' house, you got to follow the rules, even if you don't agree with them, right? So first off, understand that, right? Now, if you had the choice, which I think is awesome, if you had the choice whether or not to build your own personal brand on LinkedIn, I would say 100% yes. I mean, it's one of those things where when you build a really strong personal brand on a platform like LinkedIn, it will help you, especially if you're a salesperson, it will help you get leads. I mean, it's that simple. You literally will get more leads. You'll get more exposure. You'll get other opportunities. And when you are seen as a quote-unquote expert or someone knowledgeable in your field, you will automatically get leads as a result of that. People are going to trust you a lot more. Like, prospects are going to see your profile and say, hey, you know what? You send me a connection request. You seem like you know what you're talking about. Let me go ahead and connect with you, right? Even if stuff you're posting has nothing to do with whatever you're selling, and that's okay, right? I think the key is building the brand the right way. Like if you're just like that person whose brand now is posting cat videos on LinkedIn, well, I mean, you could do that. It's not going to do much for you, right? It's not going to do much for you, right? But if you use LinkedIn the right way, it can supercharge your results. It'll give you more opportunity, et cetera, right? And the reality is, if a company, this is my opinion, if a company really doesn't like you posting anything at all, that probably tells you more about that company, than about you, and it's just like anything else. If you use LinkedIn the right way, it can create you more opportunities. You might get better jobs, etc. But here's the thing. What I have found, and I've seen some companies do a really good job. So I think Gravy is a really good example. Gravy is a really good example of a company in which they have focused on having their people post about whatever they want. And the really cool part is they're posting whatever they want, but like 20% of the time, probably at least, they're posting about the company Gravy. And I love that, right? I see the same thing with Gong. Gongs are the same thing as well. Like their employees will post about whatever, and a good portion of the time they're still posting about Gong. And their posts from their employees drives tons of engagement, tons of views. And I know that is leading to future hires are getting hired, a better talent, okay? I know it's leading to more opportunities down the road, right? And also, here's the thing. I know those employees, I see them on other platforms, they're getting exposure and invitations to podcasts and other cool things and speaking engagements, which makes them feel really fulfilled. And when they're happy and they're able to be themselves and do these things, and they're able to fulfill the parts of their life that they want to do, that's pretty cool. And that only leads to better results for the company. So is there a risk that potentially they may build a brand and leave? Yeah, but the way I look, it's kind of like investing in your employees, right? Like
Hmm.
investing in employees so they get skills to get better. Their job will get better results. You can't fear that you invest in your employees, they get better skills, and then they go somewhere else because they have better skills. When they build a good brand, it's only going to help the company, and it's only going to help that person as well. It's only a win-win. And I'm sure unless you have a bad company, then they're going to stay for most part.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot to do with your employees are essentially customers to the
Yep.
company to do stuff, and you want to treat them so well that they would never leave anyways because everything
Right.
they need was fulfilled. So yeah, if they grow a really big following and they have a really big book of business, and sure, there's people that are going to approach them and say, hey, will you take this book of business over here and come work for us? And maybe they'll give them the sweetheart deal. But if they look at it and they go, hey, here I can do whatever I want. I am getting all my needs fulfilled. I have, unlimited potential. Why would I go leave here to some other place that I might not, find happy, or I might be curtailed, or I
Right.
might not fit in right? So I'm going to stick here. But they continue to build their brand. They're also bringing in a ton more business, so they're not going to maybe hit the ceiling as quick as they possibly could. But then as a company, when you're putting your culture out there that much, right? So you're also putting filters. You're putting a ton of filters out there that says, hey, look, if you don't like what we're doing, we're not for you.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're pre-qualifying your leads, right? You're not getting businesses coming to you that like, hey, we wouldn't want to work with you because you don't fit our morals and our values and the way we do business. And also those employees, how many times do we hire people we think, hey, on paper they look fantastic, and then they just don't fit culturally into
Right.
the organization. So you're also filtering out those people that say, hey, look, I'm not going to fit in there. Like, I don't want to have that kind of environment where I work. I want to be in a different type of environment. Like, you're also self-filtering a lot of stuff. So you're all of a sudden your productivity of sales, leads, new hires, building and promoting people within drastically improves because you're filtering out a lot of the nonsense you're not having to sort through. So I think there's a huge potential of letting people create some personal branding that also reflects back to how the company is. So I think that's really going to
Yeah.
be the future. The companies that embrace it are going to see massive success, and the ones that don't are going to get left by the wayside. And right now, at least in my industry, the construction industry tends to be about 10 years behind like the tech industry of adopting technologies and the way to do it. There's like this huge blue ocean of people. Like if I'm in like the tech B2B people, they're like posted on LinkedIn every
Yeah.
single day. And it's like they're
Right.
following it's like, man, this would be hard to create your own little niche of personal brand in this space because there's so much going on. Then I go to my construction people and it's like nobody's posted in 3 weeks. If they do, it's like
Mm-hmm.
a share of like their company article. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, there's such a blue ocean for these people to just come right in here, set up shop, create a personal brand strategy, and just become known across the industry
Mm-hmm.
of like, hey, you're the expert at whatever it is you're doing. And if you did that now in 3 to 5 years when this kind of like catches up, you're going to be miles ahead. You're going to be seen as the
100%.
as the expert because it's a free land grab right now. So
Oh,
love
yeah.
love that potential right there. Cool, man. We've had a long chat here, and I want to make sure we have time to wrap it up here. So I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to be all in on an idea or an outcome?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, right? So, I feel like when someone says they're all in, right? Not everyone's gonna be 100% all in, right? So, when someone has an idea, a concept that they want to work towards, and so if I'm talking to someone about that, I always like to ask them, hey, well, are you interested or are you committed, right? And there's a big difference there, right? Because when you are interested in something, a concept or idea, you only take action when you feel like it, right? So if you wake up not feeling good, you're probably not going to take action. But when you are committed, you take action regardless of how you feel, right? So you wake up, you feel sick, you still take action, right? And I'm not saying to work when you're sick, but you get my point. The point is when you are truly all in, you are actually committed. You take action regardless of how you feel, regardless, right? You find a way to overcome all obstacles. So when you set a goal, and you have that concept in mind you want to put into make it real life. And when obstacles show up, because they will, you find a way either through them or around them, and you persist through. And when you do that, that shows you are truly all in.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about showing up, doing it anyways, even on the days you don't feel like. In fact, the days you don't feel like it are more important than the days you do, because those are going to come up more often. And love your answer. So we talked a bit about your business and you're supporting B2B salespeople, but I'm sure you're a bit more specific with who you ultimately serve. So who is that person that you work just the best with? Who's that ideal client that you're looking to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I work directly with B2B sales professionals to help them sell more and earn more. Right. And the cool part is because of what I do, reality is industry really doesn't matter. Right. All industries pretty much have applied as well. And I find even age doesn't really matter as well. What I have found, because it really doesn't matter whether you're brand new actually or you have tons of experience, every person I've worked with has seen a massive increase in their results. But if I choose one characteristic, it would be that they are committed and that they're all in. Because when they're actually committed all in, that type of demographic form, that psychographic of understanding that trumps everything, right? They come in and even, let's just say, for example, they only learn one thing from me, right? But that one thing generates an extra $50,000 that year. To them, they understand it's worth it, right? And those are the ones who are truly committed, right? But reality is most of the time they come in, they learn lots of things. But the point being is when they are committed, regardless of their experience, regardless of their tenure, regardless of their industry, they will achieve results because they are truly committed to putting the work in with my guidance, of course. And by doing that, they achieve greater things than they thought possible.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about execution. You have to execute on those ideas. It's not enough to just have the ideas or learn the lessons, but you actually have to go out and execute them. So very cool. So if somebody wanted to get connected to you, where should they go to find you?
Yeah, awesome. So they can find me. LinkedIn is probably easiest. So that's probably where I'm most prevalent for most of my time. So look up Marcus Chan on LinkedIn. It's the only guy with Speedos in the tagline.
Easy to find. Hashtag Speedos. So
yeah,
very cool. So I definitely encourage everybody that's listening to go connect with Marcus. If you do, reach out, say hello, let him know you heard about him on the All In podcast, and just follow him daily because he's just always dropping a ton of value. Like in his daily posts on LinkedIn, you're going to learn a ton. He's got a Facebook group as well that they're super engaging, and if you have questions, he's always jumping in there and giving you like tremendous feedback. They're not just like little short answers, but man, it's just a ton of help. So there's so much you can learn just being surrounded by him and then the network he brings with them. So I encourage you all to reach out, connect with Marcus. So thanks again for coming on the show. Had a fantastic time chatting with you. I think we ran a bit over 30 minutes, but that's okay because we covered a lot of amazing fun topics. So very cool. Thanks for coming on.
Nate, thanks so much for having me on. It was my pleasure.